Hi, this is Professor Lucien, and this is my Module 1 assigned reading review, and I'm also going to provide some additional information in this one as a demo to help you in your weekly reading assignments. I'll talk about some other things as well. I want to make this as clear as possible, and I will be doing this each week for a selected number of readings just to help you out. You've probably, if you're watching this, you've probably already viewed Module 1. All the modules are going to be in similar format. The Module 1 is more of a description or an overview. Then I've got the learning objectives, the assigned readings, lecture multimedia, which tend to be the videos and links. I've got an actual Word document for the assignment. It's got the questions you fill out, basically the summaries and the reflection. Then this is where you upload it. And then we've got the discussion. You click on that and you see the discussion questions, and that's where we will discuss it either on WebEx Live or you can go on and actually participate. And then I put the lecture, the updated lecture PowerPoint here at the bottom because you don't really need it, but it's something you may want. Here, when you click on objectives, I've got the learning objectives right here. This is important. I want you to realize these are the things that I was thinking about when I chose the papers, when I chose what I wanted to cover in my lecture video and what I want you to get out of the multimedia that I provide you. So this is insight into why I selected those things. And as you go onto the discussion board, as you work on your assignment, I shouldn't say that, as you read the assigned papers, chapters, going to websites and everything, think about this stuff because that's why I chose it. Here are the multimedia for this week. As I had stated in the the course overview, we've got first will always be the lecture. It's just under 22 minutes. It's longer than it normally will be unless I record it live, which I may do now. Then I've got a few YouTube videos that I think provide great foundation. And because this week I'm providing a review of 3 of the 5 assigned readings, I'm trying to give you more time to watch these videos and take notes, at least get a feel for what I want you to get out of it. So after you watch the lecture video, please watch this short 3.5 minute on the Industrial Revolution, this 12-minute on the hygiene of the Industrial Revolution, which I thought was great. That was kind of a lucky find by me. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I apologize. This just 5-minute video by ABC World Report on Taylorism, and I'm going to give you a review of the chapter that I provided. Then I highly recommend, I should have kept it maybe required, but it is 53 minutes. So if anything has to, if you have to prioritize what you need to do due to lack of time, I do recommend you watch this. So this is a great video. It provides a great understanding for what life was like in New York City in the early 1900s, which provides insight into why the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire actually occurred and what happened after it. And then at the bottom, I've got this, and this is definitely voluntary, a BBC documentary on the Industrial Revolution, and it takes it from, its startup in the UK. So I've got the timing of everything here. If you watch the first 5, it'll be about an hour and a half of your time. You add the 6, it's about 2.5 hours. When you click on the assignment, I provided you with the learning objectives for the week, just in case you didn't look at them. So here I provide a summary of all the reading web links, so this will be consistent throughout the whole course. So what I want you to do is indicate what you're reviewing, provide your review, and then go to the next one. And then I want you to choose one of the 3 here. And this, these were all important aspects, reflective concepts that I want you to think about and talk about. Just choose one of them and write about it. It's a way for me to assess, are you taking the stuff at sort of its service or value, or are you really thinking deeply? Are you connecting to it? And that's what that's all about. Here's the stuff for the discussion board. If you post 2 and 2, 2 and 2 is the minimum. That's an 85 out of 100. If you participate pretty actively in the live, boom, you'll get all the points. And then I've got the 5 different things I'd want you. You can choose what you want to talk about. You have to do all 5. Choose the 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you want to speak on, and then I want you to go back and read what other people posted and comment to them. That's really what the grade is. It's the original post and the response post. It's not just going on at one time during the week for like an hour and going blah. It needs to be more frequent. That's why it's meant to simulate what we're going to do in the 45, 60-minute session that's going to be live. here are the assigned readings. As you can see, I narrowed it down to 5, and that was really difficult. Actually, I took off a Peterson paper. Peterson is a big part of what we know and practice about safety, so I felt bad about taking it off, but we only have 6 weeks to do this, and so I had to triage. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully one of my family members answers that. So I'm going to review Taylor, Heinrich, and Manuel and ask you to read Smith and Smith. Okay? That's all you got to read for this week, and so I'm going to get to that. But that's not to cut these other things short. These are all really good papers. And if for some reason you choose a topic for your semester paper out of this first module, I've got some other things here that you can actually go straight to. So let's begin with Frederick. I believe it's Winslow Taylor or Wilson Taylor. That doesn't matter. You have to know his middle name. The father of scientific management. And the book is called Principles of Scientific Management. And here's the chapter. Chapter 2 is what I gave you. So the chapter, this is how I broke it down. You can go back to the learning objectives, but I want you to know what Taylorism was all about. And what he did is, in this chapter, he compares what he defines as current, and this is 1920s current, management style, which he labels as initiative and incentive. And what he's basically saying is workers need to be motivated to maximize their output, and the workers have all the knowledge because the knowledge was gained through experience. So he's premising that, which is interesting because this was a transition period between, once you watch the Industrial Revolution stuff, from a more of a craftsman or crafts and trades to unskilled that go into the factory. But what he's saying is that there are skills and knowledge unique to the jobs that people have within these companies and within these plants, manufacturing plants typically, or mines, two predominant forms of industry back then. And when a person is hired, they are taught that, so that it's almost like an apprenticeship, and that knowledge tends to be held within those work groups or job titles. So the longer a person has been there, the more knowledge they have, and they stay current based on what the needs are. So it's much more autonomous than what we're used to today. And that although managers, supervisors tended to be upper class workers, that wasn't so much the key anymore. So companies were hiring college-educated individuals to come in as managers, have been given sort of management science training, but they lacked the application or the work knowledge. And so the company was relying more on getting worker output through incentivization, through initiatives. Okay? And what he's saying is, no, there's a much better way to do it. We can break things down and we can do it a different way. And he provides a lot of different case studies and examples of how he learned it and where it came from. So it's an interesting, longer chapter, 30 pages. And what he came to is that there needs to be more of a shared responsibility or accountability for the worker's output. And therefore, if a manager's incentives of managers' work performance are based on what the workers are putting out, that makes it so they have, I hate to use euphemisms, but more skin in the game. So there should be more of a division, that the workers do the work, and that management's attempting to collect, to study what knowledge they have to do their job, and then make it better for them because management's smarter. And that's what he's really trying to say. And he says, so let's, what scientific management is all about is go out there, observe, and identify the workers that are working harder, that do it better, and then really study how they do it. And is there a better way to do it? Are there better tools? Is there a better technique to how they're doing that would maximize efficiency? Then on the other side of it is, okay, so we're going to pay you guys more if you can meet this higher level. And he gives the example of the work he did at Bethlehem Steel and the hauling or the loading of rail cars with pig iron. And that, just on their own, workers on average would move about 12.5 tons during a work shift. But he found that it was with certain training and specification and incentives, pay incentives, he brought that up so an individual would move 47 tons, or about 4 times what they would when they're on their own, because he believed that it doesn't rightly say, but he has the assumption that workers will put the minimum amount of work out based on pay, and they want to look busy. And he said that, but this new approach, management is more on the workers, making sure they're, because their performance is also graded on what the workers do. And but then he says that your workers need to be stupid. He said they pretty much are, but they're not smart. Therefore, management's smart. Workers need management, and then management makes the decision. And I put a little quote down here that the worker should be so stupid and phlegmatic that he more readily resembles an ox. And that is bad. I'm sorry. But I based on this, how often have you seen either workplaces or work designs to maximize output? And so they bring in just the minimal intelligence, but maybe they're strong or young, strapping, and put them to work and really push them hard to get a job done, and discipline instead of try to educate and influence. And so we still see, and actually, was it Henry Ford? Yeah, Henry Ford was the first one who's credited with the assembly line, and it was based heavily on Taylor's scientific management. So next, let's go to Heinrich. I'm citing it from Heinrich's 1950s edition, which is the third edition of his book. The original was in 1931. In the chapter that I assign, the author proposes 10 axioms of industrial safety, which is sort of an all-encompassing of his main points. And so this chapter is the most important chapter, and then from here he kind of provides additional insight to his major findings here. And so when he lists the 10 axioms, he identifies where in the chapter he'll discuss it. So the first was the domino theory, which you've probably heard before, and I have it here in figure 2 on the bottom of the screen, the 5 factors in an accident sequence. And he makes the contention that an injury won't occur unless an accident occurs. And he begins with the environment, fault of the person, the hazard there, and then an accident occurs and injury results. But what he says is, if this is how an injury occurs, if we just remove one of these dominoes, an injury won't occur. And so that's his contention, that we should analyze the breadth and the pre of an accident. If we understand that and we can control one of those factors, an injury won't occur. Now, of course, the cause of accidents are not unilateral, like a domino falls. It's more complex than that. It's multifactorial. It's time-based. There's a lot of things that go into it. But he gave us the first indication of a system. This is a complex system has more interaction between factors, but this is good. This is a great start for early 1900s. I got to give him that. Then he went on to talk about, he analyzed some 75,000 claims to an insurance company. And also, I believe he indicated that some came from the insurance carrier, some came from actual companies. That's what I kind of interpreted from the reading. That he broke it down and assigned a single cause to each of those claims for his database, and came up with this, what does he call it, chart of direct and proximate accident causes. And he felt that 88% were primarily due to unsafe acts of the people, about 10% from unsafe mechanical or physical conditions, and then a 2% were just completely unpreventable. I believe he calls them acts of God. That's what he had said. They couldn't be prevented. So this was an interesting, but what he didn't know back then, because it hadn't been introduced yet, was the fundamental attribution error, in which a human being, when we observe something, we tend to assign the blame to the individual that's most proximal to it. It's a natural thing we do. It basically satisfies our accident investigation. And so back then, I could see 9 out of 10 accident investigations evolving to blaming the worker in some way, shape, or form. But also Heinrich admits a few pages after he proposes this racial breakdown that he may be unfairly assigned. Maybe he doesn't admit to it, but you can kind of read between the lines when he's proposing it that he may have overemphasized the unsafe acts as the major. That and so it's interesting, and what he's trying to get at is that don't just correcting a physical hazard is not the end all be all. It should be primary, but secondarily, there's a big contribution by the worker themselves. I think that's understandable, right? But it shouldn't be taken as like a natural law. It's not a natural law that 9 out of 10 accidents or injuries are resulting from unsafe conditions. I think we can all agree on that. And I think other studies would support that as well. Now, the last one I think is the most interesting, and I am recommending that if you do have the time, try to read pages 24 to 32. They are fantastic, and they're still somewhat relevant to what we're talking about today when it comes to safety metrics. And what I have interpreted from reading it, and I've read it multiple times now, is that attention is automatically given when a major accident occurs. So a debilitating injury, whether somebody is amputated or something is crushed or someone dies, and we analyze it. We got to prevent this from happening again. This is horrible. There was a negative outcome. But he said that there's an interesting corollary between the number of those major injuries and the minor injuries. So the ones that where maybe they needed some first aid or a little bit more, but they could go back to work. But what he said is there seems to be an association there that person fell off a ladder or slipped on a ladder or slipped on a floor multiple times before it resulted in something where the person, again, was debilitating, amputation or death. And what he's saying is there's probably a lot more instances of where the person doesn't even receive an injury. They self-corrected, caught themselves, fell without injury. So kind of a fail-safe, if you will. And that's Todd Coughlin language right there. Dr. Todd Coughlin, pre-accident investigation, if you didn't know. And so what he's saying is, yeah, we'll focus on the major stuff and investigate it, and we should be trying to prevent those, but there's value in the less serious. And he also goes on to say that it appears that in most instances, not all, he gives some examples where, you fall off of a skyscraper, it's not going to be minor. That one accident, boom, bad. But what he says is that the actual severity of the outcome, the severity of the injury resulting, is actually so much fortuitous that it's by chance, very much by chance. And I've always kind of held to the old adage of the severity of an accident is inches and seconds. That if the person is in the right place in the right time, they don't get hurt. The person's in the wrong place, wrong time, they get really hurt. So what he's just really making an argument for is that the more frequent, less severe should be of interest. We should want to have that reported and understand it, because that understanding may lead to a better understanding of root causes, may actually get us to a corrective action that mitigates it better than if we just focus on the unique or rare major injury. And that's what he's saying, and I agree with that. Naturally, we're going to go and talk about Manuel now. I shouldn't say naturally. It's a good transition to Manuel because he criticizes Heinrich, and almost in a he almost takes things personal, I would say, if you read it. So let's talk about it. So this was published in 2011 in the ASS. It used to be ASSE. Now it's ASSP's Professional Safety Journal. Don't let the title trick you. It's more of a trade magazine than it is a journal. And it says that it's peer-reviewed, but it's a editorial review panel, of which maybe one or two of the 8 or 9 people on it are actually academics or classically trained scientists. So they know how to be analytical yet unbiased when they evaluate something. And so if 6 of the 8 people on the editorial review board are just regular practitioners and they just read it and they're like, this sounds really interesting, this sounds really cool, or they know who the author is, they're just going to say like, yeah, let's publish it. So the other 2, their dissenting reviews get voted down. And so I think I was actually on the editorial review board when Fred had submitted the manuscript, and I think I was the lone dissenting voice. And even though the authors are anonymous when they submit the manuscripts, I knew it was his because it had all his telltale styles, that of which using theoretical discussions between people, using too much quotes from other books or reports, or simply using bullet points to make his justification. I just don't, that's not a good way to prove something. Where's the experimental design if he's actually going to show something new? So let's go on to, so he criticizes Heinrich's direct cause, which was the 88-10-2, and the foundation of major injury, the 300, the 129-300. We had just spoken about that not 120 seconds ago. So, what he argues is that Heinrich's original data analysis. Let's start out first. First of all, he calls these myths, and he says that academics and safety professionals have been using Heinrich's concepts and theories as law to justify everything they do. And he's like, this is so wrong. We're going down the wrong road. And these are myths. We got to demystify this stuff. And you guys are, shame on you for saying that Heinrich provided any sort of value. It devalues what we do. Okay, that's kind of what he says. Not quote. So what he says is that Heinrich's original data analyses are not available for reviews to, validate. And so so what he does is he makes the argument, he chooses modern case studies. So I believe he uses the Deepwater Horizon accident, like circa 2009, 2010, and the Challenger explosion that I think happened in the late 80s. And he says that these were complex causalities and that Heinrich's simple, forward approach of one person's error does not explain it. Well, I don't think Heinrich said that in 90 years or 100 years this stuff is going to hold true. He's saying based on what we knew back then. So I believe it's a little bit. Here's everything too. I've got the table 1, pages cited from edition. This is not a valid, unbiased evaluation of what someone meant. Okay? He did selective data mining of phrases. That is not a validated or analytical way. It's interesting, but it's not a way to prove something. It really isn't. So what else did he say? Believes human cause is much overemphasized. That's one of Manuel's arguments. Argues that it should be a systems approach, multi-factor modeling. I totally agree with that. But you got to understand where Heinrich was at the time he made these assertions. And then cites disaster investigation. And he also cites Deming, which is a quality expert, and James Reason on human error. Deming and Reason, this is like 1980s stuff. So how would something published in 1929 fit into now? I think what you need to do is understand the gap and how things have changed, not say, you were wrong, we shouldn't talk about it today. So the author argues that Heinrich purports that the cause of no injury and major injury are identical. So that's quote unquote, that was in the article, indicating that sources of serious injury and death are singular, unique, multifaceted, complex, and demand priority. And he uses some examples that I'm not really sure it gives the right support, that the frequency of minor work comp claims is going down, but the rate or the occurrence of death and serious claims has remained somewhat consistent. And therefore, he says there is no connection between what causes the minor and the major, and we're focusing too much on the minor because we're getting success there, but we're not getting success above. I don't see a direct correlation there, personally. I can see why he would come to that conclusion, but there's too many confounding factors that are built within those relationships. He doesn't clearly define what the face validity is of that. He just makes a wild assertion, and I just don't think it's right. I think it's a question that I think needs to be investigated. And then I've got his recommendations down here. I think he's just he came in, he wanted to tell a story, he wanted to make an argument, and then he found things to fit that argument. I think that's really what I saw from this article. So I'm going to close up with tips. I'm sorry I went so long. This is supposed to be like a 15-minute video. It's already 24 minutes. So what I want you to do as you read the 2 Smith, and I could actually, I'm going to bring that up. I want you to, okay, I'm going to go over this real quick. Review the learning objectives so you have an idea of why I would choose these things, and read the discussion, questions, or reflection as far as what I'd want you to get out of these things. What I do first, this is how I do it to save time. I read either the abstract, the intro, or the conclusions. I want to get a feel for what the whole paper is about, and then I go read it with an open mind. Now, does the author do a good job of providing a fair, unbiased, or analytical, critical review that comes to these conclusions based on their assumptions? And it's okay for you to question authors. Just you need to understand where that's coming from. Where, does it not feel right to you, or is there evidence in other articles or other publications that support that? And that's where you may actually want to go look something up. And that's awesome. That's what I want you to do. And for those of you who are in my 701 class, we call that the rabbit hole. Sometimes issues bring us to a completely different place, but it's the journey and what you gain during that experience that really means a lot. So sure, you can have an immediate response or an opinion, but then what I want you to do is pursue the validity of that concern. And that can either just be, yeah, I looked something else up, or I searched it and I found this, and we'll discuss it. You can have it on the discussion board, or we'll discuss it live during the WebEx, but also evaluate the methods and interpretation. Now, if you haven't had research methods yet, that's going to be difficult, but you can still question it and ask others. And that's what the discussion board and everything's going to be about. And of course, as you read these things and think about it and attempt to find support or something to refute, these curiosities tend to turn into your own research. And so with that, what I want to do is just really quickly bring up what these look like. I am sorry it's not coming up correctly. Come on, dude. So here was Heinrich's chapter 2. As you can see, it was double, so one page was actually counted as 2 page numbers. I reviewed that for you. Here's Heinrich's chapter 2. See, I took that picture and put it on there. Here are the axioms of safety. And you can breeze through these if you want to. Here's Manuel's paper that I reviewed for you. So he's calling it myths. He's already kind of giving connotations. The fourth paper, the first one you read, not a great copy of it, because I think I actually hand copied this. This is Smith, 1971. This is the one that he was asked to study the potential effectiveness of OSHA, of somebody coming through and doing a visual audit for hazards. And here's the summary. So if you read the summary, it really encompasses everything he tries to say. And then you can look through and look at the actual data and how they collected it and what it means. You see, there's just a lot of tables. This is typed, by the way. And I think it's interesting. It just, what I want you to point out is what the author or authors indicate is the potential effectiveness or correlation between what is causing injuries in Wisconsin versus what a group of inspectors would find or look for on an inspection. And then this is their characteristics of successful safety programs. So a follow-up, and I think probably generated by the insight provided by the 1971, they did a study of paired organizations here in Wisconsin, find out what are the characteristics of successful safety programs. And this should be a really quick read. So we've got to, read this so you understand what they're trying to show. Read the background to what went into, what they looked into, the methods they used, what they collected, getting all the way down to the results where they start, breaking it down. It's more of a rank order than anything, and that's all right. Rank order is still a valid way to find out what's more important than other things, given the criteria you collect. And then they get into the discussion. Discussion's an important part because it lays out how they came up with the different aspects of what would be considered, elements of a successful safety program. And you can compare that to what you might find on the OSHA website as far as their assertion. More recently, actually 1989 was the first time, as the elements of a successful safety program. I think it's pretty cool. And so like this one right here, I'm just going to point this out. I'm already over. Low accident rate plants had a high level of housekeeping and displayed environmental quality superior to those of high accident rate. Now, a lot of people have interpreted that one particular aspect to say, well, if we just clean up, like your, what do they call that? Not the Sigma, it's eluding me, the one where you have to clean up and organize. And, I brought this to test because Mike Smith was my advisor, and I said, now, just because you clean, that isn't what you guys found out. It was because workers felt like they cared more for their work environment and therefore naturally took care of it and kept it more organized. He goes, well, yeah, that's exactly what we meant. It's like, well, that's not what's being interpreted. 5S, is that what it is? Yeah, 5S, that's what I was trying to think of. And you'll see here, I actually went and mined all these and reviewed all these as well. Real interesting stuff, and some of these are actually on the suggested readings. So I went way over. I apologize for that. But that's sort of a summary of the readings and what I want you to go through. Me reading all these twice, I read all of them twice, probably took me in the neighborhood of 4 to up to 5 hours. And I was like, fine tooth combing these things. And so that's just something each week you're probably going to have anywhere, depending on how fast you read and how much focus you can put into it. It may be a 3-hour exercise up to a 6-hour exercise. So, but keep me posted. I can always answer questions. Sorry I went so long. Let me know if you have any questions.